Hi, it's me, Brooks. Thank you for joining us on Heal This. My guest today embodies an extraordinary demonstration of discipline, determination, and profound healing across all the dimensions of mind, body, and soul. He is not just a husband, a father, and a grandpa, but he's also a creative and artistic individual. I'm deeply honored to have the opportunity to share his inspiring story with all of you. This is David Ruff, and welcome to Heal This. And I was hoping that you would
Thank
take
you.
a little bit of time to introduce yourself in your own words. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for that introduction you gave me. That was fantastic. So thank you. I appreciate
You
that.
deserve it.
But
You
yeah,
earned it.
basically, thank you. A little about myself. I am a creative. I work in the creative realm. I'm a brand ambassador for a company that has about 250 team members, and we do restoration work on homes that have been destroyed or had some kind of traumatic event to them. Before that, I was in architecture, in the world of architecture, and that's what my degree is in. Worked in that realm, and then as for a lot of people during the Great Recession, a lot of changes had to happen on people's lives, and this opportunity came up, and I have not looked back and love every single bit of it. I do something different every single day,
That's awesome.
and then I just love it. So, but yes, I am a grandfather, Opa Tuna to young Nova,
Oh,
and then I have two children as well. So, and they call me Pa, but
oh,
and then a lovely wife who we're about to celebrate our 34 years of marriage.
wow.
So those are things that I'm very proud of, in not necessarily in that order, but just life and things that have developed me and who I am through all of that and interaction. So that's a very good description of who I am that you gave, probably better than my own. But that's a little bit of
Well, 34 years of marriage is quite an accomplishment. So that's
yeah,
a really
yeah.
big deal. And
The
I
hardest,
know,
easiest thing I've ever done.
yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I know your sweet wife, and she's amazing. So, yeah,
Yes, yes, she is.
awesome. What I'm really hoping to share today are your insights on your healing journey and your thoughts, your emotions, maybe some of the struggles and the resistance that you've gone through. And if maybe we could talk about what the big thing that has happened in your life that we're talking about.
Yes. Yeah. The big thing that we're talking about, the change in my life, has been through weight loss. I've struggled with my weight for most of my life, and it wasn't something that came on. I was extremely skinny when I was a kid, up and through my teen years. And when I got into college and started studying architecture, I was went from a very active lifestyle to more sedate and at a drafting table, because back when I was studying architecture, we
Right.
actually still drew and by hand. And then the advent of DataCAD and AutoCAD and all that came in, but that sedentary lifestyle creeped in, and it was just a little bit at a time, year after year after year, to where I got to a very large man for a while, for a good long while.
Yeah.
Tried a lot of different diets. Some of them I was successful on, but then something in life would happen, a deadline at work that I would say I need to really focus on this, and would just kind of let that process that I had started go. And
Right.
next thing you know, I was back up and weighing more than I had even before then. But I got to a point to where Thanksgiving of 2022, a little over a year ago, we went to one of our favorite places, Cumberland Island, and camping. And we'd been doing that for a couple decades already. And I couldn't get around very well. Had to have a couple rest days, as I called them,
Mm-hmm.
where we just basically hung out at the campsite. And that really, I'd already been thinking about doing something major at that point, because I had gotten to a point to where I actually felt like I was at my limit. Like like I physically don't think I can get much larger without dying. And I really felt like that was happening. And so really started making the decision that if I'm going to do this, I've got to make that decision. I've got to do it, and it's got to be wholeheartedly. So during that trip, me and my wife, Christine, talked about it a lot on that trip. That was really the main focus was, what does this decision look like? What
Right.
does it entail? What are the ramifications of it? What does our relationship change in that? How does it change? Does it change at all? Or does it get better? Does it get worse?
Right.
All the different adjustments, because we had made the decision. Now I'll say we a lot because it's not just a me thing. Sometimes you don't get, stay married for 34 years without sharing your life totally with that other person. And but made the decision at that point that I was going to do bypass surgery.
Okay.
And I wasn't going to do the sleeve, but I was going to do like unplug, plug it back in,
Wow.
the major one, because I felt like I needed a big tool.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Other things that I had done, they were good, but I had kind of gotten to a point to where I realized that I had to have a major change, and it had to be everything. Every aspect of my life had to be involved in it. So that was really got cranked up. Started losing weight in March
So, can I ask
of
you something
2020.
before that
Yes.
goes on? So,
Absolutely.
some of what you said about leading up to that point, you're kind of putting yourself on the back burner. You're kind of putting your health, your overall
Yes.
health, kind of maybe even what you're thinking and feeling on the back burner. You're just kind of
Yes.
getting through, and all of a sudden you kind of get to this point where you're like, I can't do it anymore. And you said you didn't think you could gain any more weight and stay alive. But can I ask you
Correct.
this? Do you feel like little parts of you are dying all along the way, because it's kind of like now you're on this other side. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
we can get to that later, but there's parts of you that are waking up again and coming back to life.
Correct. Absolutely. 100%. Um, and that's been the amazing part of the journey, was discovering these things in my life that I had pushed away and I had not been doing, that really didn't even realize that what the reason was why I'd stopped doing those things and been active in this and active in that. And you're right. Putting yourself on the back burner as far as your health was something that I did. I could, in my head, it was easy, for some reason, it was easy to dismiss
Hmm.
eating well, exercising when I had a
Right.
deadline, or when I had something happen with the family, or one of my children was doing something. I'm not saying it's anyone else's fault. It's me putting
No.
myself on the back burner and
Yeah, because we're
allowing
all
life
guilty
to
of it in
really
some way, shape, or
dictate. Yeah,
form.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But you're right. And that's been and there's been good things and bad things that have come out that I just didn't anticipate, that have been fantastic, but that just being extremely active now, compared to what I was, and kind of at times also just dealing with immense guilt, almost to the point of shame.
Mm.
And I really had
Yeah.
to deal with that along the journey. It wasn't like I had to deal with that ahead of time. It was once I started losing weight,
Hmm.
and the ball really got rolling, and then it got to a point to where I really didn't have to have some sort of external motivation.
Hmm.
It was, the engine was churning at that point, and I was self motivated.
Right. So before you do the surgery, before you really commit to that, you talk about how you had a lot of conversations, you do a lot of prep work, right? And
Yes.
it's not
Yep.
just already learning how to eat different or maybe exercising more. It's more also the discipline that has to come with it,
Yes.
and there's a lot of teaching that has to go into it, right? Where you're learning
Yes.
a lot before you even commit to this,
Yes.
or maybe you've committed but you haven't had it done yet.
Correct. And that was leading up to the surgery. I actually lost 80 pounds leading
Wow.
up to the day of the surgery, and that came about really from, getting some books,
Hmm.
that my doctor provided. I met with him on just really getting to know him, meeting him, and he gave me this book, and it was a big book,
Hmm.
about the procedure, all the different procedures. So that was one of the things we did on that trip was we went from cover to cover on that book,
Wow.
and I mean, really dug in, learned, but then also dug in like, wow, okay, so this is going to happen,
Yeah.
and that's going to be something. A lot of little things like that, but then also had a gentleman at work, the CEO of the company I worked for,
Hmm.
who knew a guy in California that was about 9 months ahead of me in the process. Put me in
Nice.
contact with this guy. He's the president of a very large company out there. I didn't know at the time, but he started talking to me and he was excited about what he was doing.
Hmm.
And so he said, well, what do you want to know? And my first question to him was, you're 9 months ahead of me. You know where I am. You
Hmm.
know where I am in the journey.
Hmm.
What would you do differently than what you're already doing? Or what would you say now is what you need to do? And he said, I was waiting for that question. So
Hmm.
he was prepared for that question from me. And he said, you need to fight the mental battle now. You can't wait until you have the surgery. You need to fight it, and you need to fight it now. You're 6 months out. I think at the time I was about 5 months out from the surgery.
Wow.
Is that fight it now, fight that mental battle. And he was so correct. So I started like taking the things that I knew I was going to have to do afterwards and started trying to work my way to that ahead of time. And that was huge. But again, it was having this all of a sudden now I had this source that I could just text. He's in California. I'd text him at night and then,
Hmm.
I'd get an answer back from him the next day. A lot of times it'd just be immediate. And he would say, this is what I did. Here's what I did. So having support, but it was a tremendous learning um, experience with just me and him talking. And we only have met one time
Hmm.
about a month ago. We finally met. He
Oh,
was in
that's cool.
town on business, and we
Hmm.
had, ironically, we had dinner together, and we both ate about half of our meal, and
Yeah,
so it
that's
was
what we
funny.
do.
We
So
both
that's awesome.
we both had it together. Yeah. So, but just support, learning,
Support.
educating,
Yep.
and just finding everything out externally is going to happen to me. But then all of those things also then really started shedding light on things that I needed to take care of mentally, right? Those reasons
Yes.
why and really kind of understanding the idea of not putting yourself on the back burner in your health.
Right.
And I had a mantra last year that was tend your garden. And
Nice.
that's something I'd heard and something from Matthew McConaughey, who I really enjoy
Yeah.
listening to him. But he talked about tending your garden. It's your family, your friends, your faith, your fitness, and your finances. Those are his five, and those are my five as well. When one of those is out of balance, they're all a little out of balance. You might be doing really well in four of them, but if one of them's way out of whack, it's going to start affecting the others as well.
Absolutely.
So that was a big part, and so that's been my mantra, my go-to was tend your garden, and I knew
Hmm.
that I needed a bulldozer, and that's what bypass was.
Wow.
Bypass wasn't growing; it wasn't growing anything. It wasn't the solution. It was a tool that
Right.
came in and just scraped my garden clean down to the soil. That's what I knew that I needed. Even though I'd lost 80 pounds, it was like, no, we're going through this journey and it's going to happen. And this is the way it's going to happen. And that's non-negotiable.
Yes. So I love, you said so many things that I really, really love. I love that there's a support system. It's huge. I
Yes,
don't care
it
if you're
is.
losing weight. I don't care if you're going through another massive change in your life. You have to find a support system. And
Yep.
the person that you reached out to that was willing to share his story with you, if you can find someone else that has the same experience and can say, I got you, like, let me tell you what happened to
Yeah.
me so that or a mentor,
Yes.
right? If you're like doing something totally different and you've never done it before and you need someone to just hold your hand while you go through it, because
Yeah.
we aren't supposed to do this alone. We're not supposed to do
No,
this alone.
absolutely.
And
Yep.
Honestly, if you think back of a lot of times when you've tried to do something alone, you end up just giving up, or you're like, it's not going to work. So, and I know your family has been a huge support to you too. So I want to come back to all
Yep.
those things, but I also
Yeah.
have to say all of these things. I'm so glad that a doctor gave you information to learn and prepare yourself. This is a major surgery. And just like a disclaimer between you and me, we're not experts. We're just sharing our story here about what's going on.
Yep. That's
But
good.
I love that there was education there, because there's lots of
Mhm.
times we end up having to have emergency surgery or some kind of other something to our body, and we have no idea what the
Yes.
ramifications or the consequences are going to be. So I love that there was
That's great.
education there. So all of
Hmm.
that makes me really happy, because that is preparing you to succeed instead of the
Yes.
failure part. So I think that's
That's right.
awesome. And then the thought process, that's where everything starts, is in our thoughts. So I
Hmm.
love that you're battling the thoughts before you even go in, right? You're just like, okay, I'm
Yes.
preparing. And not just the thought about what am I going to eat today, but the thought about
Yeah.
who am I? Because I'm pretty
Yes.
sure at some point the weight starts to define you. Like you start
Oh.
feeling
Oh.
defined by this weight. And I also want to bring this in so we can kind of talk about all of it. But I have heard it said before that, like when we gain a little bit of weight, like, okay, whatever. But when we start really putting on weight, it is a buffer between us and others, and
Yeah.
us and connecting to self. A lot of times it's
Yes.
like it's a buffer. And so, what are your thoughts on all that?
Mm. Um, that's a biggie
I
for
know.
me. When when you're big and you walk into a room, um, everybody knows your problem immediately. There may be people in the room that are really bad people that do really bad things, that have all kinds of faults, have all kinds of things that they deal with that you'll never know. But when you're someone who's battling your weight, and it gets to where it's really big, uh, your your ability to read someone's eyes and your intuitive nature just pegs. For me, it did. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
I should just speak for myself, but I think other people would probably agree with that are large. Is that when you walk in the room, your your issue is on full display. There is no denying it.
That's a good way to put it.
You can see it in people's eyes
Mm-hmm.
immediately, which for me became even more of a buffer because I got very good very quickly at identifying someone who was disgusted by me or was
Mm-hmm.
like couldn't couldn't get past you know my size, and then also so I immediately would just kind of be like, okay, note to self. But then
Right.
also started being able to figure out and learn people who were very genuine, sincere people
Mm-hmm.
who could look right past that. Um,
Right.
but when you walk into a room as a large person, I think, and it's just human nature. It's not anything somebody does to try and be mean or intentionally do it.
Right.
But when you walk into a room as a large person, you know that everybody going to know that you just walked into the room.
Mm-hmm.
And just to fast forward, somebody asked me about a month ago or so, what's one of the best things about you know being skinnier now or skinny. And that is, I told him, and it just popped into my head. I said, it's walking into a room of people and no one noticing me, no one looking at me and
Right.
lingering. That it's been amazing to see that, and but it still makes me feel like I need to be paying more attention to someone who is as big as I was,
Mm-hmm.
and I need to make sure that that person feels comfortable. I need to maybe even say something to reach out to them, just say, hey, if especially if they know anything about my story, I
Right.
just want to share it with them, and because I just understand, and
Yes.
I see that. Um, even now I see it, but it was crazy how it switched to where people look at you one way, and now it's like, oh yeah, and then they just go right back to doing what they're doing instead of just staring.
Right. Or
So
having that look of
little thing,
like yeah, or not knowing how
yeah.
to
Oh my
act
god.
too. I think that's
Or
another
like, yeah,
response.
just not knowing how to act, and that's part of it. And I never took it personally, but it
Sure.
did immediately help me to define some things and some people, and
True.
maybe that's fair or not fair, but it was a defense mechanism. It immediately was like, this person right here is extremely genuine, and you can tell they've got
Mhm.
empathy for my situation. And looking back, that's where a lot of that guilt came from, was why didn't I see it? um, why didn't I how why did it take so long to figure it out? And I kind of dealt with that in a way that really was, you know it's just part of the journey, for one.
Mhm.
But two, then there's other things that I needed to deal with, and just kind of really stop making excuses and just do something about it. Tend your
Yes.
garden.
That's right. I think we all have something like that. We need to stop making excuses.
Absolutely.
We're,
Absolutely.
most
Yeah.
if we're not dealing with a weight issue, like you said, most people just aren't going to know about it. So
Right.
we just need
Yeah.
to stop making excuses
Mine's
and do
mine's
it.
yeah. Mine's tangibly
Yes.
noticeable.
You talked about it being difficult. You knew it was going to be difficult physically.
Yeah.
You knew there were going to be a lot of physical changes. And, so diet, exercise. We've talked about the thought process and maybe even what you think of yourself. But what are some of the things, and you kind of touched on this already, what are some of the things that really surprised you? What are some of the things that happened as you were making this metamorphosis in your life?
Yes. Um, well, one of the things that did surprise me was the speed with which, once it started really moving. And the gentleman that I spoke of before, he told me how much he lost before his surgery, and I was like, all right, well, I'm going to beat that. So I set little goals like that. I was going to beat it. And then he asked me one day, he said, "What's your big goal?" And I said, "Well, is to lose one more pound than you," because he's telling me his story.
Mhm.
But then once it started rolling, I was shocked, really, at how fast it was changing, and how fast my body was changing, to the point to where I'm off all medications already, and I was ahead of schedule on what that would be. It was just shocking how, once I really got going, how quickly it moved, and it was not just the physical part; it was the mental aspect.
Okay, good.
When that switch, when I got to the point to where I knew the switch was flipped and it wasn't coming back, I went from, saying early on, I really think that I can do this, to it was now, and it still is, I'm doing this. There's not
That's
a
right.
I
There,
know I
there.
can do it. It's not even I believe I can do it. It's I am doing
I
it.
am doing it. Yes.
That happened very early on,
Yeah.
and so it made it much easier. But that was really surprising. And then the feelings of the guilt feeling that just kind of hit me, and it lingered. It stayed with me. It was about a month or two that it just bothered me, and
Sure.
and I let it affect me. But then I realized that, you know what, this is an important moment, and don't dismiss it, but just deal with it,
Yeah.
and work it out, and work through it, and push it out of the way, because this is a roadblock. And if you
Absolutely.
don't get through it, you're gonna
Just gonna
have
keep coming back. Just
yeah,
gonna
it's
keep
gonna
coming
circle
back.
back around.
Hmm.
And so I just waded in, and had a lot of really great conversations with my wife, um, and my son as well. He's been really good on, um, asking really sometimes some really tough questions. He's
Yeah.
very, very good at that. Um, and then my daughter as well. Just their support, but just dealing with the guilt I felt towards being their father and not setting a better example.
Well, I think all of that
Those are
is
some biggies.
fantastic. I think everything you said right there, it's like you, first of all, things don't have to take a really long time to work. I think it's one of the stories we
Right.
tell ourselves is that to get what we want, we really have to struggle. It has to be almost
Yeah.
unbearable. It's, and so that's why people don't do it, because they're working it
Yeah.
all up in their head to be so much more than if you actually step into it, right? It's just starts carrying
Yes.
you. And then you
Yep.
actually
Yep.
change. You go from thinking it and feeling it, and then you go to believing it, and then you are it. You are doing
Yes.
it, and you are the change
Yep.
that's happening. And like you just feel it taking you right to the next thing. And thank you for not just again stuffing the guilt, right? Because
Yes.
that's
Right.
what was happening. You felt guilt all along. It's just that
Yeah.
you didn't want to process it. You wanted to put it somewhere else. And you felt
That's right.
shame all along too. You just put it somewhere else. And
Yeah.
so going to get a little, woo woo here on you, but everything is energy. Everything is vibrating at a frequency. That's how we measure energy. The
Yes.
lowest frequency is shame
Hmm.
of all frequencies. And
Interesting.
I
Okay.
did a lot of reading on that and talking about it. And, it's lower than fear. And I think the reason why is because it's so personal. Shame is so personal.
Yeah.
Whereas fear is a lot of the times external, like all the things we're worried
Yeah.
about. So you are looking all of those right in the face, and
Yes.
you're like,
For the
let's
first
do it.
time.
Let's do it,
Yeah.
So
For the first time facing it.
it took a little while, like you said, and I'm so glad that you're
Mhm.
talking about the process because it's going to come up and you sat with it and you
Yeah.
asked the questions, right? Like, what am I feeling right now?
Yeah.
Is this mine? Why? Where's it
Hmm.
from? And then you're working through
Right.
it. And you probably said sorry. And you probably said, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right. Yeah. A lot of that, like that's just spot on. And I think that when you talk about the low vibration, it's like a sneaky, it's like
Mm-hmm.
a sneaky assassin, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just don't hear it, but it's there and it's
Mm-hmm.
causing problems.
Yep.
Um, and
Yeah.
that was, like I said, I really felt like this is an important moment right now because
You do
this
the
is
real
where if
healing.
I don't hit this and face it, yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
right. If I don't, like you said, it was there all along, but all of a sudden now it's like I started feeling good about myself, and that
Yeah.
shame was like, oh, let me just pump it up a little bit so he can
Mm-hmm.
hear me.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and that very easily could have been the end of the process. And
Mm-hmm.
I know for people sometimes it does. And when I had been successful on a program or a diet, there was always something like that just kind of would
Right.
scuttle it.
Try and bring you
And
back
I
down.
just was determined at that point. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
gone, I've worked too hard to stop, and it was like, all right, let's just unpack this
Yeah.
and work through it and move on, and and say, you know, that it's okay, and say to my kids, hey, sorry about this.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could have done this better. And their responses were, it
Okay.
wasn't something that I made it in. I made it so much bigger in my
Mm-hmm.
head,
Yep.
which is a famous saying that we tend to make things so much bigger in our imagination than they ever really are in reality.
So true.
And so I had, put up this huge thing. It was just this big thing, and for my kids, it was like, no, you're good, you're okay.
Right.
But I had been carrying that anchor around for a while.
Absolutely. And I think just
So
recognizing it. And that's so I do a lot with the trapped emotions, and the research shows that emotions just want to be recognized. It's like they
that's
come
right.
in and they want to they just want you to know that they're there because they are teaching you something. And
Hmm.
once you just recognize, oh, I'm feeling this way, usually you connect the dots like, oh, that makes
Yeah.
sense, and then you can move on. And I think also in going along with parenting, we're all going to make mistakes.
Mhm.
There's no parents out
Oh yeah.
there that are perfect. And I know
Right.
as a child, just hearing sorry means so much. Like
Yes.
as an adult child, I know how hard it is, but hearing sorry means like, okay, good. Thank you for just acknowledging that it wasn't always perfect.
That's
And I
great.
just needed to hear that. So I know your
Right.
kids, they love you already. It's just like when you say that, they're
Yeah.
like,
I
thank
know.
you. Awesome. Connecting more.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. So you have learned how to feed your physical body different.
Mhm.
How are you feeding your thoughts and your emotions and your soul different?
It's a great question. I like just with anything that comes around that's negative, I just want to I just want to hammer it, right? And I just want to get done with it and then move into more positive talk.
That's good.
So tend your garden was a big one for me.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I'm kind of where I am now, um, my my phrase or instead of tending my garden, now I'm cultivating my garden.
Ooh, I like it.
And
Yeah.
so cultivate now is where I'm starting to build back, build back not just my physical body with muscle
Mm-hmm.
that I had lost through for losing as much weight as I did, but then also just in my spirit, just understanding that through this process, I'm able to really speak into other people's lives in a way that I couldn't before.
Right.
And those opportunities have been fantastic. Um, but on the my soul side, just the cultivating is not just about the physical; it's about the mental aspect as well, and just so much more clarity in the way that I think about
Mm-hmm.
things as well. So it's been a transformation all across the board, um, and it's been wonderful. Um, yeah, I feel so much more alive, not just physically, but also mentally, and I feel like the best part of me has not even yet been seen, right? Like
Oh, I just
I'm
got the
older,
chills. That's awesome.
yeah. I feel like the best part of me has not yet been realized, like
And
where I'm going and what I'm doing.
that's pretty cool, right? When you're,
Yeah,
a grandpa,
absolutely.
right? So,
Yeah, it's great.
um it's it's like you're having a deeper compassion for others because
Yeah,
you had a lot of compassion for yourself, and
yeah,
it's an everyday thing, right? It's not
right.
something that you do and then you're like, okay, it's on autopilot. I think
Mm.
you and I had talked about um, the spiritual practice of it, where you
Yes.
kind of check in every single day.
So, you know, every morning I get
Mhm,
up and it may not be immediate, but sometimes it's when I'm, brushing my teeth or,
mhm.
not combing my hair, but my chin hair, fronting it up and looking in the mirror and, I'm like, all right, let's tend the garden today.
Yep.
Let's make good choices and
Hmm.
let's do this. But I'll pray um, intentionally to make good
Yes.
choices, to have that small still voice
Yep.
that back me up, help me to see the choices I'm making today before I make them,
Yeah.
and to be able to evaluate it in a proper way. But just being mindful right off the bat, first thing in the morning, with some prayer, and then
Hmm.
just really some positive talk to yourself about how you're going to do the day, how you're
It's
going to do
good.
it. Because you're right. I make it sound sometimes like, hey, once the ball got rolling, I was surprised how fast it came off. That doesn't mean that every day was like, hey, yeah, today another pound, it's going to come off today.
Right.
It was and it still is at times. It's a tough battle, and there's a lot of things that you just don't say and do, and your body starts changing in a big way. But it's a difficult process. But that's why starting your day off with
Yes.
positive talk to yourself, with just intentional focus on what you want today to look like. And the more you
Yes.
start thinking about what you want your day to look like, the tasks that you have to do, but also just the way in which you're going to conduct yourself, it's made amazing how all of a sudden you start following through on that. And
True.
when you follow through on it, then it just builds that
Hmm.
support to yourself that, hey, I can do this. And it's just you're just banking it every day. And you
Yep.
start off the day that, and I start off the day that way. Um, and so that's like, it's just, and I still do it. I haven't hit
Yes.
like what my, I think what my personal big goal was to lose 200 pounds, and I've lost
Wow.
188 so far.
Wow. That's
And so I know I got
amazing.
12 to go. But to me, like when I first said, I think I can lose 200 pounds, I really
Wow.
didn't believe it at the time. And now that I'm here, 12 pounds away, it's like, I can't believe that I'm this
That's
close.
so exciting.
But I'm gonna do that and get
And
there.
you just ran a 10K
Yes, that's right.
and
And
you didn't stop the
I
whole
didn't
time.
stop. And before that race, the longest that I had run had been 3 miles without stopping.
Wow.
And as you know, um, I had some support with me, family in town, yourself.
That's right. That's right.
Um,
That's
my
right.
younger brother came down, and he's a runner, big time runner, and then my son came up with his wife from Florida, and my
Hmm.
daughter and my
Hmm.
granddaughter came over from Alabama. So I had a
Yeah.
ton of family in town, but the two of them, my brother and my son, ran with me. I told him, I said, I'm not going to be able to run the whole thing. So I'm going to run as far as I can, and then I'll walk and run the rest of the way. And they were like,
Right.
all right, hey, you're setting the pace. And so this is where I got a tremendous lesson on support. Even at my age, you can still learn. And I got such an important lesson. And this is so good, is that they ran with me,
Hmm.
and they ran alongside me, and then they would be behind me, and they'd be alongside me, and they'd be behind me. They never said anything like, "Hey, let's do this. Hey, go, go, go." They weren't rah rah. And they were back here having a conversation, like they were sitting by a fire, right?
Right.
And they're both. I'm up here in the front of them,
Right.
just huffing. But the important thing they did was they never went ahead of me. They never were like going ahead of me to like push me to go faster. They said, "Your pace. We're here to support you." And so
Hmm.
literally, they were there for support, but literally they were behind me,
Oh.
and their will was kind of pushing me. Never said a word about
Hmm.
anything other than when we got to like mile 4, my son said, "Dad, have you ever run this far?" And I said, "No, no, I haven't." And so we were like, "Okay." And I said, "But I'm going to go up to that bridge, and then I'm going to reassess when I get to the bridge." And I got to the
Yeah.
bridge, and I was like, "All right, I'm
I,
going to that next power
that's
pole."
right. That's right.
And then eventually it got down to where it's like, all right, the next control joint that's like 10
That's
feet
right.
ahead of me.
Yeah. But it's
um,
but
and
the run is parallel to where you're at now, right? Like
yeah,
you'd
correct.
only done so much before. And then
Yeah.
you're in it, right? And then now you're like just one more pound, just one more,
Yes,
just
that's
one
right.
more.
That's right.
And it's like and everybody's cheering you along. They're not pushing you
Yeah.
or like, "Hey, if you
Not
stop
pushing me, but
today, yeah,
they're just
we're good."
there, and it's noticeable, and
Yeah.
it's you can see it, you can feel it, and they
Yep.
never said a word. Now I did take one step at the 5 mile mark because I was going up a little hill, and like my knee buckled. My son was like, "Kek, kek, kek, kek." And he's like, all right, hey, you stop now. You come this far. And I was like,
It's just
I just realized
encouraging
if I
you.
did, yeah, I realized that if I did stop, I would literally stop, and I would not start walking because my
Yeah.
thighs were killing me.
Yeah.
But I was like, all right, I can't, and so made it the whole way.
I mean,
I still have a hard time believing that that's what I did, but
I know
in the
it's
meantime, I signed
amazing.
up for the Peachtree Road Race which is
That's
in July, and I've
that's
always
so
wanted to do.
cool.
And that's exciting.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
but
Wow.
now that I know that I can do that, and
That's right.
I know that I'm still yet learning that I'm stronger than I think I am. I think
Yep.
most people are that way. So,
Yes.
but
So
it was an important lesson on support,
yes.
silent
Yes.
support.
Oh, well, I know everyone's really proud of you and proud that you've did the 10K, but also this whole entire journey. And
Right.
I'm sure that you've seen it affect your relationships, and how has your healing journey, created space for other people's healing journey?
My most important relationship with my wife, it's been a lot of fun. We're empty nesters now, so we're like a couple of teenagers, and we've always kind of been that way with each other.
Right.
We've always just been kind of that picking at each other, and that
Hmm.
little teasing each other. We've always been that
Yes.
way, but there's kind of a renewed spirit in that, and like the funny thing is that she is has always been a fast walker, and now I walk faster than her. I used to have to like run sometimes to keep up
Wow.
with her. She would walk so fast. I'd have to like run and then like try and walk fast, and she always was really good at it. So now we're able to do a lot more, and we just recently went back to Cumberland Island, and we were there for a week, and we hiked 65 miles over the course of the week.
Wow.
I mean, we were going
Man.
every single day. We went to places we hadn't been to in a long, long time on the island, because you're on foot, and it was wonderful, and it was wonderful checking back to just like 14 months before that, when we were there for Thanksgiving,
And
and
that's
we
really
didn't we
not a
didn't
lot of
do.
time. That's not a
No,
lot of
it's
time.
not, but
Mm-mm.
yeah, yeah,
But
and that's
it's
part of
huge.
that is to that starting my day every day like it is, and then making things non-negotiable, which is something my brother Paul had instilled in me, is that just these things that are big battles in your life, make them non-negotiable, and your agreement to yourself is that it's no longer a debate anymore. It's no longer
Right.
an arguing point. It's non-negotiable. Make it non-negotiable.
That's right.
And I do that with exercise. I get out and do something every single day, and whether it's raining or not, if I'm going to the park, I'll go out in the rain. I don't care,
Right.
because and there's a joy in that. Really, I've
Hmm.
done it several times where I knew it was raining and I knew I was going to get rained on, and I went anyway.
Yeah.
And there is a joy in kind of thumbing your nose at the prospect of just you know what, it's raining. I'm just not going to do it today.
Right.
It's like, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go out in the rain. I'm going to run, and that was just there's a lot of joy in that.
Yeah. Aw. Well, I I'm just truly inspired, honestly, because
Good. That
your your
we
trials,
feel good.
your struggles are not the same as everyone's, but we all have something. And so if you can do it, I can do it. I say that
That's
all the
right.
time. If I can learn how to edit this, you can
Yeah.
do something too, because I was afraid of
Right.
technology not too long ago, and now I'm learning how to edit things. So, I mean, there's like
And you're killing it.
we all have something. And so, if I can do it, you can do it, right? So,
Yeah.
I'm just really truly grateful for your time, and
Well,
thank
thank you.
you for sharing all of your. This is a lot. This is really,
Yeah.
um, close to your soul, and I'm honored for you to share it. And I know that while you're holding that space for other people, they're
Hmm.
inspired too. And you are opening the door to invite other people to ask for support
Absolutely.
or
Always.
advice.
Um, your soul has an opportunity to reach out to other people, and you should do
Yes.
it. And so
Well,
I'm not going to dismiss those opportunities.
and you shouldn't. I
Yeah.
noticed on my journey, my healing journey, that as I'm helping people, and I see it kind of like this infinity sign happening between
Mm,
myself and someone else, that I'm offering love. right? I'm trying to offer this space
Yeah.
where I'm sharing my life, my soul with them, and offering any kind of help or assistance that I can give. And in return, they give me love, and
Yes.
then it reminds me that that's why we're supposed to be doing this together, because
That's right.
we're all connected. And you mentioned earlier, when there's that negative vibration, when anything is negative, it's very tangible. Once you start to raise
Yes.
your vibration, you start noticing, I don't really want to talk about this, or I don't want to hear this
Mhm.
on a TV show or whatever. It's just
Yeah.
bringing me down. And so just really raising that vibration, I think it makes such a big difference, because that's where we're supposed to be. So in those higher
Well, and
vibrations.
that's where the yeah, and that's where it's higher energy, right?
Yep.
You're gonna have more energy in
Yep.
that space as well,
Yep.
and then it just continues to start feeding it.
I've really enjoyed our time. Thank you for sharing everything. And I'm
Yes.
going to put your links below if anyone wants to reach out and ask questions. And I'm starting this movement. We're raising our vibration, heal this. That's what we're working on. So we like the spiral up, So
That's right.
thank you for your time, and keep doing it. And we want to know when, you've met your goal,
Okay.
and
Absolutely.
hoping to see all the pictures before and after. And I mean, even just now, I'm so proud of you and so
Thank you.
inspired. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for
Yeah.
letting me be on here. So,
Yeah,
and just spewing my words.
that's right. Awesome. We'll see you soon. Okay.
All right.
Bye.